The house on Willow Lane used to be full of noise. There was the sound of David's booming laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and the rhythmic beat of music every Saturday night. David and Elena were the couple. Married for 15 years, they were the ones people looked at when they wanted to believe that true love still existed. But lately, the house had grown silent. It was a cold, heavy silence that felt like a thick fog. Elena sat at the kitchen island staring at a cold cup of tea. It was 10:30 p.m. The dinner she had made, a roast chicken, David's favorite, was sitting under a layer of plastic wrap untouched. This was the 4th time this week he had called to say he was stuck at the office. "Working late again, David?" she whispered to the empty room. When David did come home, he was a ghost. He would slip into the house quietly, his face pale and his shoulders slumped. He avoided her eyes. When his phone buzzed on the nightstand, he would grab it frantically, stepping into the hallway to answer in a hushed, urgent tone. Elena's mind was a dark place. She had read the articles, she knew the signs. Decreased intimacy, secret phone calls, late nights, and a sudden change in routine. Is she younger? Elena wondered, her heart aching. Is she someone from his new project? Is she the reason he doesn't touch me anymore? The suspicion was like a poison. It seeped into her dreams and made her bitter. Every time David kissed her cheek, a quick dry peck, she felt like she was being lied to. On a Tuesday afternoon, Elena couldn't take it anymore. She sat in her car in a parking lot, her hands shaking as she dialed a number she had found online. "Price Investigations," a gravelly voice answered. I think my husband is having an affair," Elena said, her voice breaking. "I need proof. I need to know the truth before our 16th anniversary next week. We'll follow him, Mrs. Vance. We'll give you everything we find." For the next 5 days, Elena lived in a state of suspended animation. She spoke to David in short, clipped sentences. He seemed to be in a daze, barely noticing her anger. He moved slowly, sometimes wincing as he sat down, which Elena interpreted as the physical exhaustion of a man leading a double life. Then, the email arrived. Elena opened the attachment with trembling fingers. There were 10 photos. The first showed David's car parked outside a building downtown, not his office. The second showed him walking into a jewelry store. But he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman in her late 20s. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and a bright, supportive smile. In the third photo, David was leaning on her. Her arm was around his waist, and his arm was over her shoulder. They looked incredibly intimate. They looked like a couple. The final photo showed them inside the jewelry store, looking at a velvet box. David was smiling at the woman, a look of pure devotion on his face, a look Elena hadn't seen in months. Elena closed her laptop and fell to the floor. The air left her lungs. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, it was a documented fact. He was buying a gift for another woman. He was leaning on her for support. He was replacing Elena. 15 years, she sobbed into the carpet. 15 years, and I'm just a placeholder. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and felt a cold, hard stone settle in her chest. She wouldn't cry at the anniversary dinner. She wouldn't beg. She would give him exactly what he deserved, a final curtain call. She picked up the phone and called her lawyer. "I want the papers ready by Friday, and I want them delivered in a gift box." The week leading up to the anniversary was a master class in acting. Elena was polite. She even laughed at David's weak jokes. She watched him leave the house every evening at 6 p.m., claiming he had one last push before he could take the weekend off. "Enjoy your push, David," she would say, her voice dripping with hidden venom. David seemed oblivious. He was focused on something else. He started spending time in the garage, locking the door behind him. Elena heard the sound of music playing, the song they had danced to at their wedding, Unchained Melody. He's practicing, she thought. Her stomach churning. He's practicing how to dance with her. He's going to leave me on our anniversary. She went to the mall and bought the most expensive black dress she could find. It was a revenge dress, tight, elegant, and cold. She wanted to look perfect when she destroyed his world. The night of the anniversary arrived. David had booked a table at the Silver Crate, the most romantic restaurant in the city. When he came down the stairs to meet her in the living room, he was wearing his best tuxedo. But he looked terrible. His skin had a grayish tint, and his eyes were sunken. He was sweating despite the cool evening air. "You look beautiful, Elena," he said, his voice raspy. He reached out to take her hand, but she pulled away to grab her purse. "Let's go, David. We don't want to be late for our celebration." The car ride was silent. David kept checking his watch, looking nervous. Elena clutched her purse, where the envelope from the private investigator and the divorce papers sat side by side. When they arrived at the restaurant, the maître d' led them to a private table in the corner, surrounded by candles and white lilies. It was the exact setup David had arranged for their proposal years ago. "Happy anniversary, Elena," David said, raising a glass of sparkling water. He wasn't drinking wine. "Is it, David?" Elena asked, her voice dangerously calm. "Is it a happy one?" "I know I've been distant," David said, his hand trembling as he reached across the table. "I know I haven't been the husband you deserve lately. But there's a reason for everything. I've been working on a surprise. Something to show you that you're the only thing that matters to me." "A surprise?" Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You mean like the one in the jewelry store? Or the one you've been working late with every night?" David froze. The color drained from his face. "Elena, what are you talking about?" "I know about her, David. I know about the jewelry. I know about the secret meetings." She reached into her purse and pulled out the stack of photos. She slammed them onto the table, right next to the candles. "I hired a professional. Did you really think I was that stupid?" David looked down at the photos. He saw himself with the young woman. He saw the jewelry store. He looked back up at Elena, and to her shock, he didn't look angry. He didn't look caught. He looked absolutely broken. "Wow, this is heavy." Elena is convinced she's caught him red-handed, and honestly, looking at those photos, who wouldn't be? But we've all been there, judging a situation based on a snapshot without knowing the full story. Before we see what David says next, I want to ask, have you ever been sure someone was betraying you, only to find out you were completely wrong? Or has your intuition ever saved you from a lie? Drop a trust or skeptic in the comments below. I want to know how you handle these moments. Now, hold your breath, because the truth is about to come out. David stared at the photo of him leaning on the young woman. A single tear escaped his eye and rolled down his cheek. "Her name is Sarah," David whispered. "Oh, so we're on a first-name basis?" Elena spat. "How touching." "She's a specialized social worker and a physical therapist," David said, his voice cracking. He didn't look away. "And she's the only reason I'm able to sit in this chair tonight without falling over." Elena felt a cold chill run down her spine. "What?" David reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a small crumpled piece of paper. A medical report. He pushed it toward her. "I didn't want to tell you," he said, his chest heaving. "The doctors told me 4 months ago. It's an aggressive form of ALS. It's terminal, Elena. My muscles, they're dying. I started losing my balance. I started losing the ability to walk." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at the report. The words degenerative, terminal, and palliative care jumped off the page. "I was terrified," David sobbed. "I didn't want you to spend our last year together as a nurse. I didn't want you to look at me with pity. I wanted you to look at me as your husband for just a little bit longer." He pointed to the photo of him in the jewelry store. "I wasn't buying a gift for Sarah. I was selling my grandfather's watch, the one I loved, to pay for private, intensive physical therapy. I told the office I was working late, but I was at a clinic across town. Sarah was helping me do 3 hours of agonizing exercises every night." "Why, David? Why would you hide this?" Elena was shaking now, the photos on the table looking like a cruel joke. "Because of our anniversary," David said, wiping his face with a napkin. "I knew that by today I might need a wheelchair. But I made a promise to myself. I wanted to dance with you one last time. Not a shuffle. A real dance. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet and hold you in my arms before the chair became my permanent home. Sarah was training me. She was holding me up so I wouldn't fall." The restaurant music shifted. The violinists David had hired began to play Unchained Melody. David gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. With a groan of pure effort, he began to push himself up. His legs shook violently, His face was contorted in pain, sweat dripping down his forehead. "David, don't. Sit down." Elena cried, reaching for him. "No," he gasped. "I spent 3 months for this minute." He stood. He was wobbling, his body failing him, but he stood. He held out his hand. Elena took it, her tears blurring her vision. She stepped into his arms. He was leaning heavily on her, his strength almost gone, but as the music played, he moved her slowly in a circle. It wasn't a perfect dance, but it was the most beautiful movement she had ever felt. "I love you, Elena," he whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you with the truth. I just wanted to be the man you married." One last time. Elena looked down at the purse where the divorce papers were hidden. She felt a wave of nausea. She had almost ended her marriage over a man who was literally killing himself just to give her a 3-minute dance. The dance ended, but neither of them let go. David's weight was becoming more than his trembling legs could bear, and Elena held him with a strength she didn't know she possessed. She guided him back into his chair, her heart breaking with every labored breath he took. She reached into her purse. Her fingers brushed the sharp edge of the divorce papers, the cold legal documents she had intended to use as a weapon. With a swift, silent motion, she crumpled them into a ball beneath the table, hiding them like a shameful secret. "I'm so sorry, David," she sobbed, dropping to her knees beside his chair. "I saw those photos and I let my fear tell me a story that wasn't true. I thought I was losing you to someone else, but I was losing you to this." David reached out, his hand clumsy as he stroked her hair. "I shouldn't have kept you in the dark. I thought I was being brave, but I was just being proud. I wanted to be your hero, Elena. I didn't want to be your patient. You are my hero," she whispered. "Do you have any idea how much more I love you for this? For fighting that hard just for a dance?" The months that followed were the hardest of Elena's life, yet they were also the most profound. The silence in the house was gone, replaced by the sounds of a life lived with intentionality. There were no more late nights at the office. Every hour was accounted for. Elena became his hands when his fingers could no longer grip a fork. She became his legs when the wheelchair finally became a necessity. She contacted Sarah, the therapist from the photos, not as a rival, but as an ally. They worked together to make David's remaining time as comfortable as possible. The photos that had once caused Elena so much pain were now framed on the mantel. She no longer saw a cheating husband and a mistress. She saw a man fighting a silent war, leaning on a stranger so he could stand tall for his wife. She saw a sacrifice that went beyond words. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, David's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you sorry, Elena? Sorry that the celebration turned into this?" "No," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Because for 16 years I loved the man who laughed and danced, but this year I got to love the man who stayed and fought. I've never known you better than I do right now." David passed away quietly on a rainy Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after that anniversary dinner. He died in the house on Willow Lane, in the bed they had shared for 16 years, with Elena holding his hand. After the funeral, Elena sat in the garage. She found the old record player David had moved there to practice his secret dance. Beside it was a small velvet box, the one from the jewelry store photo. She opened it. Inside wasn't a new diamond or a flashy necklace. It was a simple silver locket. Inside was a tiny, microscopic inscription, "I'll be waiting for our next dance." Attached to the locket was a note. "Elena, the therapist told me that even when the body stops, the soul remembers the rhythm. Thank you for leading me when I couldn't walk. Thank you for trusting me when the world looked dark. You were always the only one." Elena realized then that the private investigator hadn't just given her photos of a betrayal. He had inadvertently captured the most selfless act of David's life. He had documented the struggle of a man who refused to let death steal his last romantic gesture. She stepped out onto the porch, the silver locket resting against her heart. The fog of suspicion was gone forever. She finally understood that love isn't just about the moments when everything is perfect. It's about the moments when everything is falling apart, and you still choose to hold on. The meaning. Jealousy sees what it wants to see. Trust sees the truth. We often destroy the beauty in front of us because we are too busy looking for a lie. Before you react to what you see, make sure you understand what you don't know. This story is a powerful reminder that our perspective can be our greatest enemy. Elena almost walked away from a man who was giving his last breath for her, all because of a few photos and a lack of communication. Have you ever jumped to a conclusion that turned out to be completely wrong? Or has a secret in your life turned out to be a beautiful surprise? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help us all grow. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might be struggling with trust right now. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that uncover the hidden heart behind every moment. This is Moments and Meanings by Anne. Until next time, remember, don't let your fears write a story that hasn't happened yet.